Alright, I'm probably going to end up going really deep in the deck tech today, so if you're here for the gameplay, feel free to use the timestamps down below to just skip directly to that. Hello folks, Phil Gallagher aka ThrabenU here for another Legacy video, and today we are going to be editing and playing with a mono black land destruction deck built around cards like Sinkhole. But there's some uncertainty about how this deck should be built, and rather than just give you my finished product, I thought it would be nice today to kind of show you my thought process for adjusting a deck list when I get one. So this is what Sergey sent me. This is a slightly updated version of what my podcast co-host Brian Koval, aka Bosch and Roll, played on his channel a little while back. The general idea is pretty clear. It is a resource denial deck. You are looking to blow up your opponent's lands with cards like Sinkhole, Wasteland, and Fulminator Mage, and once you have capitalized on taking your opponent off of their initial resources, you want to finish the game with a powerful card. Sheoldred the Apocalypse does, 6 damage per turn cycle, counting the trigger and the 4 combat damage that it does. Exsanguinator Cavalry is something that scales up every turn and is particularly good in multiples. But when this donation deck list was sent in, I was told that there's some clunkiness. And in Brian's initial league with the deck, he also really felt some problems. So the changes that are here are some of Brian's changes, and this is the starting point that I have been given. But I think fundamentally, there's some problems with the deck. I think it does not do a very good job of picking a lane. I think if you are going to play a mono black deck in Legacy, you need a very clear deck identity. You need to know exactly what you're doing. And if you ask me, what kind of deck is this? I guess I would say that this is a control deck. But this is a control deck that does not attack the hand as hard as the average control deck might. If we are a full-on control deck, I might expect 4 Thoughtseizes, 4 Griefs, maybe 4 Reanimates to bring those Griefs back, or something like that. Or at least Thoughtseize plus him to give you a better chance versus combo. If this was a full-on aggro deck, I would expect more creatures lower on the curve. I would expect, some Stalactite Stalkers, some Dauthi Voidwalkers in the main or side. And I feel like we kind of end up in this deck that has an awkward identity. So in retooling this deck, I think we have to ask, why is Sinkhole there? And we could do this a couple of different ways. We could do this as I'm going to play an early aggressive threat and back it with Wasteland and Sinkhole. If we do that, though, some of these cards like Sheoldred that don't contribute to closing the game quickly are maybe going to be less good. Or sorry, I should rephrase that, because Sheoldred closes games quickly. Sheoldred does not come down before Sinkhole very easily, right? You could do it with a Dark Ritual or something like that. But we would prefer 1 and 2 drops that are aggressive that can help us take advantage of Sinkhole or Wasteland immediately. And if I am Wastelanding my opponent, it does make it a lot harder to do this sort of stuff. And another big question with this deck list is, if we are in black in Legacy, why are we not playing 4 Griefs, 4 Reanimates, some number of Trolls, maybe some Animate Deads as well? Because that is just one of the best packages that we can do early on in Legacy. Why are we not having the potential of a 5 or 6 power creature that comes down on turn 1 if that's something that we are allowed to do in this format? Beyond that, There is a fundamental issue. This deck wants to use Ancient Tomb to accelerate out these various 3 and 4 drop creatures. But the Ancient Tombs and Wastelands don't contribute to actually casting Sinkhole or any other black card in this deck. So counting Grief as something that we are going to actually cast for a minute, if you just visualize that, the Ancient Tombs and Wastelands don't contribute to the black pips that you see in these 19 cards here. Beyond just that, this is an opposition agent deck list, which means that our opponent, if we control an Urborg, their fetch lands go from completely dead cards to things that tap for a colorless mana, regardless of what deck they are playing. So in terms of bringing this deck forward, we want to increase its power level. One of the things that Brian saw in his initial league was that he would absolutely body any sort of stompy deck, but then when he got paired against blue cantrip decks, he was just falling short there. We want to make ourselves a little bit better versus blue decks, and I think we want to solidify our deck identity. Something like the Grief Reanimate package, for example, would push us closer to the aggro or tempo side of the equation and would probably be a massive power up to the deck. Grief Reanimate is maybe not the most exciting thing in the world, but if you look at this deck list and you ask, like, why is this not playing Grief Reanimate? It's kind of hard to answer that question, isn't it? So I've got some thinking to do. And at this point, I'm going to kind of pause the video, do my tuning, maybe come up with a couple of different builds, and see where we are going to shake out as far as the final deck list goes. Okay, I went back and forth a lot, but here's where I ended up with on my rebuild. One of the first things I noticed was that if I wanted to fit in 4 Griefs, 4 Reanimates, and 4 Trolls, that left me very little space for the deck's actual identity. So I never wanted to touch Exsanguinator, Cavalry, and Sinkhole. I feel like those cards were very important to the initial build. Like, the identity is built around Sinkhole, and I think, to quote Brian, if I could play 8 of these, I would. I think this card is just very important. It helps. It's got evasion. It's got the lifelink. It gives you a scaling creature and a little bit of selection in a deck that doesn't have selection. So I was never going to touch these cards. So if I wanted to keep this deck identity, I think I can only get away with playing about 2 Troll. 2 Troll, I think, lets me reduce the land count from 20 to 19. That's a little sketch. I think I can get away with it because I'm also moving these Sheoldreds and Sorens to the sideboard for the slower matchup. And my goal is to come out of the gates faster in game 1. So in game 1, I am going to have more aggressive threats and the ability to cheese some wins. And then when we need to slow down for these blue cantrip matchups, I just have the opportunity to do so. I'm going heavier on fetch lands and dropping the Ancient Tombs since I'm going to move these things to the sideboard. Going up on fetch lands means that Fatal Push is better and that Stalker is going to trigger more consistently. And then we're going to round out the deck with a couple of Dalthy Voidwalkers. I'm going to throw 2 into the main deck and the other 2 in the sideboard. It is just a generically powerful card. If I had more room in the deck list, there were a couple other things that I had my eye on that I couldn't just quite make the numbers work. The first of those is Caustic Bronco. Whenever it attacks, reveal the top card of your library and put it into your hand. You lose life equal to that card's mana value. If it isn't saddled, if you saddle it, which is like crewing, each opponent loses that much life. So the idea of crewing this, attacking, and then just randomly hitting my opponent for 6 with a troll was a really cool idea. I didn't quite find room to get that in since we're trying to play with Sinkhole and Cavalry. And the other card that I was very actively thinking about was Vadmir New Blood. Whenever you commit a crime, it gets a +1/+1 counter. If you get 4 or more +1/+1 counters, it gets Menace and Lifelink. So these were my other things that my aggro brain was going, hey, these might be good to include, but I couldn't quite make the slots work. So I think that's where we're at. Should you need any of these cards for your Legacy collection, check out toamagic.com. Use promo code ThrabenU to save 5% on your order. They've got fast, free shipping. That's right, free shipping. And I've always been very happy working with them. I'm going to be selling them some cards in about a week or so when I head to Command Fest Atlanta. With that being said, let's battle. Okay, I have a reasonable opening hand here, and I can decide whether or not I think I need to Thoughtseize, Wasteland, or play Stalker on turn 1. The opponent has put Cavern on Goblin and passed. So the question is this an Ancient Tomb deck or not? I think I am just going to take the even trade here and restart the game. My opponent did not have a 1-drop play. Let's try to just repeat that. All right, well, we're starting the game over, so I get to make the decision of Thoughtseize versus Stalker again next turn. I think I am going to Stalker this turn and get my threat down. I think I just want this scaling as quickly as possible. And then I can either... it is an Ancient Tomb deck. In good news, there's a very good chance that I get to reanimate something on the order of a Fury on this next turn. Oh? Goodbye, Stalker. That's in theory. Ooh. Ooh. Well, I think I am always doing this turn. I think I have plenty to do. We're going to start with a Thoughtseize. How am I beating this broadside long term? Unsure. I don't think I'm beating this One Ring. I think I am going to drop Cavalry now. I think if I win this game, it's because this is still in play next turn. I draw another land, and I just kind of double scale these up immediately, getting out of range of broadside. But this broadside is going to be pretty hard to navigate. After I saw the second Cavern of Souls, I thought it was more likely that my opponent was going to be on an actual Goblins deck, rather than this kind of stompy deck that we are looking at here. And accordingly, I made the decision to start scaling up Stalker so that it would be harder to remove it with something like the Rakdos Goblin that does damage based on the number of goblins you control. But that was not the case, and we got punished by Ancient Tomb pretty hard. Okay, Fatal Push is almost good. I am considering the crazy person play of Thoughtseize myself, reanimate Exsanguinator Cavalry. I'm not sure if I'm lost in the sauce or if this is brilliant. I would love to just Thoughtseize my opponent and their one unknown card is Fury. I don't think that's happening. I lose 5 life total between these two things. I'm down to 7. I am up to 9. 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Feels like I die a lot of the time doing that. So instead, let's Thoughtseize. Gonna take the Rabble Master. I think I am going to just get the token out of the way and crash in. And then hope to just play another one of these and maybe outscale my opponent. Oh no, I had a better line. My line was attack, crack blood token, discard something, fatal push broadside. I messed up. Oh, fuck. That's very bad. Yeah, I missed my good line, though. Let's see if I can draw my way out of it. I don't scale up my creatures this turn. So I can just have 6 damage coming at my face, which means I am effectively at 4 life. Accordingly, my reanimate is not particularly strong. Let's discard this reanimate and turn it into something else. I will Dark Ritual, play a new one of these. I think I am going to play this. Absolutely not. The protection from the One Ring is great here. Yeah, I realized my good line just a little bit too late. Although I don't know that I beat the One Ring anyway. Like, this is just a lot of cards. Oh. Oh yeah, no. The top of the deck was hot. Yeah, so my opponent just hurls stuff at my face, and I don't even get to block with these. Yeah, I don't think I'm beating that draw, even if I play a touch better. So, Sheoldreds are fine for the One Ring. Sudden Edicts are medium as far as a removal spell goes. This can make some life-linking creatures, but I think is just slow. I could mess around with Null Rod as well. Conceptually, what would I like to do in the matchup? I would like to disrupt my opponent and then blow up their lands. I don't have the Plague Engineers. I cut those from the sideboard. They would be particularly good here. Bowmasters is not necessarily at its best. Sometimes it ambushes some creatures. Sometimes it does One Ring things that matter. You never get to block. I think you're going for these. I think the ability to block is probably important. Between Reanimate and Thoughtseize, I have a lot of self-damage. I need this card. I think I'm going to trim one of those and call it good. I don't think this is the best hand in the world. I don't necessarily think this is worth mulliganing either. I get to hold up a Fatal Push for a turn 1 or turn 2 creature. I get to Surveil for a little bit of selection if my opponent does not turbo something out. I am really hoping that they play a creature so that I can Fatal Push it. Yeah, that's not like the best creature in the world. I in fact think I'm going to try not to Fatal Push that one and just ambush that one with Bowmasters. Another Fatal Push? It's not the land that I want for these creatures. It's a fine card. I think I'm going to say no. I think hitting my future land drops matters a lot, and I am only on 19 lands. Oh shit. If I use this fetch land, it's harder to turn on Fatal Push. But Sheoldred seems like a hell of a drug here. So I think I am just going to go that route. Like, Sheoldred probably ends up being like at least a 3-for-1 in terms of quality here. Chalice on 1 has shut off my removal. I'm not sure how much that actually matters right now. Ooh. Ooh. Upkeep. Oh, no, I don't need to be thinking about Fatal Push. Yeah, I think I'm just always eating that Ancient Tomb. So hit my opponent for 4. Wasteland that Ancient Tomb. I will have Bowmasters on their turn, and I can decide whether or not I'm using that as an offensive or defensive tool. Yeah, you got it. I think defensive. So let's do a Bowmasters. Ping this. Block with the token. Okay, yeah, opponent throws in the towel. Yeah, so we executed our core plan, which is like disrupt the opponent, destroy a land, win with some threat. So let's try to do that again. I think I am just going to call that good. So this is turn 1 Surveil, turn 2 Grief, turn 3 Sinkhole. I like that a lot on the play. It's a little slow on the draw. I think I still keep this hand, and I'm just not thrilled. Okay, we are potentially seeing a turn 1 creature come down. Okay, it is a Chalice, so my Dark Ritual is now Grief fodder with how this hand is looking. So let's just see what's going on over there. Hopefully take their major threat. Yeah, we will take the broadside there for sure. There's just a Battlecry Goblin left over. I can Edict that easily at some point. I will be surveilling in this turn cycle for sure. All right, there's Cavern. And there's the Goblin. So let's get a little bit of selection. Cavalry is fine. I'm going to say that that's an above average draw and go ahead and keep that one. I think that I need to keep the One Ring and equivalent out of play right now. I think I'm going to take a little extra damage. Actually, it's a lot, right? Like, it's potentially 3 damage this turn, 3 damage next turn. The issue is if I take... When am I casting this Sinkhole? I think with Cavalry here, I'm going to go ahead and try to Sinkhole right now. And I'm going to attack the red mana in case some sort of actual factual red card matters, such as a Fury. So I think my plan is blow up that land, kill Battlecry Goblin, and then play Cavalry. I might take 3 more and just play Cavalry this turn if my opponent does not make another play. This is a dead card. Yeah, I think I'm okay with dropping this right now. I take 3 more points of damage from it, but I recover 2 of those points instantly. If Cavalry just eats something like a Fury immediately, yeah, it makes my play look bad. So this Battlecry Goblin ends up getting in for 6. I don't regret it. I do have sadness for drawing multiple Thoughtseizes after Chalice on 1 is in play. Don't broadside me, no. Okay. I'm going to cast this. Please sacrifice a non-token creature for me. This gets rid of Battlecry Goblin. And broadside is going to kill me relatively quickly. Like, these are just shocks that are sitting in play waiting to go to my face. Never didn't have it, though. We take those. So it's very possible that that card singularly just stabilized me. I don't get to block because Menace. Opponent is not going for throwing their own stuff here. I am attacking, and we just see if this is good enough. It might not be. I think a lot of this depends on whether or not my opponent can deploy another card. All right, they are not throwing their own stuff, which I am thankful for. That's not bad. I think I am going to stay in the aggressor role here. Exsanguinator Cavalry is particularly good right now because I have Shouldered. So not only can I get rid of these Thoughtseizes, this also triggers Shouldered and gives me 2 more life, which is a pretty big deal. All right, and we come out on top. This is a matchup that, is tough because my opponent's deck is just incredibly aggressive, but our deck attacks this deck well. We try to stabilize the board, we blow up the lands, we get cards stuck in our opponent's hand, and this is kind of how you beat a Stompy deck. Kill the initial threat, keep them from deploying more. Today's video is sponsored by Moxfield.com, and I could say all sorts of great things about them, but I'm just going to point to this number. I have 488 deck lists stored on this site. That should give you a feel for how I feel about this website. And if you were to go to my profile, you could see all the deck lists that I'm messing around with, including my EDH decks, and you can even see some of the deck lists I record with before they hit the channel. Ooh. All right, I am looking at a land-heavy opening hand. It goes Bowmasters... it goes Thoughtseize into Bowmasters or Thoughtseize into Wasteland. It's a little land-heavy for my liking, even with the Wasteland. I don't... I'm gonna try keeping. I think a lot of times I Wasteland on turn 1 rather than Thoughtseize on turn 1 with this hand. A lot of it depends on what my opponent plays. Yeah, I am just going to restart the game here. Maybe we're playing against some sort of Stoneblade style deck. My opponent fetched Tundra on turn 1. That might mean they don't have that many basics or they're very color intensive. Do not want to be drawing more lands given this hand. Cephalid Breakfast, I think, is also on the table. But we'll probably find out when I cast this Thoughtseize. Hey, now we've got a nice 1-2-3 curve. Perfectly happy with this. No Brainstorm cast in response to hide up the beanstalk. I'm going to accordingly take the up the beanstalk. I don't think I care if my opponent removes Bowmasters or whatever. I think I just don't want to lose out to long-term card advantage. My short-term stuff's pretty good. I know my opponent has Force of Will. End of turn Brainstorm is somewhat likely. If they end of turn Brainstorms, I Bowmasters in response, then they fetch, they Swords my Bowmasters, and then their Brainstorm is much worse. Alternatively, I can Sinkhole now and try to get 2 cards with that, and then maybe they brainstorm away swords. Not like Bowmaster is going to get less good. Magic's hard. I think I'm going to try to get their Force of Will. Like, sometimes they put me on Pox after seeing this and then think their swords is much worse than it actually is, since I have 2 relevant creatures in hand. Oh, they just let it go. Understood. There's the fetch. Getting green. Also not surveilling. Oh, we've got lots of colors. All right, beans are around. So whether or not these cards are here, it's a little hard to tell. I think I am interested in playing 2 Orcish Bowmasters in the same turn cycle, rather than one this turn and one next turn. So let's just do this. Playing 2 Orcish Bowmasters in the same turn means that I can respond to like a counterspell, like a Force of Will up the Beanstalk situation pretty well. No white available. Burrow is good. Does my opponent hit a white land to potentially turn on this? They do. And we're gone. So Force of Will blue card could be left over in theory. I'm just going to go ahead and pass the turn. I would love for my opponent to be the first one to take action here. Response. Bow boy. There's the Force of Will. Response. Womp. Bow boy. So now we are going to take advantage of these up the Beanstalk draws. Yeah. So then Force resolves, up the Beanstalk is going to happen. I'm going to get to ping yet again. Token already getting pretty large. Hopefully we dodged a removal spell being drawn. The Uro is still a bit of a problem if I bottom out and hit more land. Grief is okay. I guess I will pre-combat Grief, just in case there's something weird like, what is it, Doorkeeper Thrall? Dress down, sure. That shuts off this ability. For my turn cycle, I don't get to take a card here. I still get 4 damage, but I think Uro is well equipped to take over this game if there's another land drop. All right, seems like we're chilling, so let's surveil. Absolutely not to Dark Ritual. Reanimate is a card. I do have another Orcish Bowmasters in graveyard. I think I'm going to attack, see how things shake out, and go from there, though. I'm expecting something to go wrong here. Nothing goes wrong. Weird. I don't think I'm going to play the Reanimate right now. I think I am just going to hold it. It feels like we are in end of turn Brainstorm Terminus territory or something like that. No? Just land drop? That is green, green, blue, blue for Uro. Brings my opponent to 9 life, which is really 8 life. So now, how much do they have left? Ooh, that's real good. Do I reanimate on Orcish Bowmaster first? So that if my opponent has Force of Will, they potentially use it on Reanimate instead of Sheoldred's Edict. I think I like it. If they Force of Will on the Edict afterwards, this also just hits a little harder. All right, Bowmasters is in play. Ping you. Cast. Please sacrifice a non-token creature. Still playing around Spell Pierce. Oh shit, it just worked. Well, honestly, that went better than expected. We have some sweet sideboard cards to board in here. This is where like the Sheoldreds and the Sorens are going to look great. I think Douthie Voidwalker looks good. We can consider some of this other stuff as well. What is not great? I guess a small question is my opponent just playing a value-oriented dress down, or is that indicative of Phyrexian Dreadnought? Maybe it is value-oriented. I can probably go down some number of Fatal Push. My opponent might have some creatures like Endurance that I would like to remove. But generally speaking, I might get buried in a bunch of creatures at once with something like 4th Aerlingas. So I think I would rather just stay more threat dense. I can like swap a Fatal Push for a Sudden Edict. That's something that is maybe a little better at taking an Uro out of play. That matters a lot. My reanimates do get slightly worse against my opponent's pile of exile-based removal. I'm bringing in a bunch of threats. I could board out some worse threats. I could also, like, not attack my opponent's hand and play to the board more heavily. Just, like, whatever you have in your hand is fine. Thoughtseize specifically helps me take up the Beanstalk, which can be important in the matchup. I could just do the value-oriented Hymn to Turok. Slightly unsure whether, like, Thoughtseize or Reanimate is better. I'm going to stick with Reanimate. Well, all right. I'll have to decide how to play this one. So it's always Swamp Dark Ritual. It can then be Stalker into Troll into Reanimate, or I can just attempt to Sinkhole my opponent on turn 1. I don't know. I guess I can always just Reanimate on turn 2. Let's get a Stalker down immediately. And maybe attempt to blow up a land. Yeah, let's go for the land. Alright, it worked. I will play Stalker with my last mana. We are not descending this turn. We will descend next turn. My opponent's mana base is probably such that I might have just shut off Swords to Plowshares in the short term. Negative. Don't mind getting another land. Send it. I think the next thing I'm going to do is a little weird. But I think it's probably correct to not expose the Troll to Swords to Plowshares. I think I get a swamp, and play the next one of these. And if Swords is going to happen, my opponent takes out one of these cards instead of my 6-power Troll. And I start scaling up both of these immediately. It was not quite how I conceptually thought this hand was going to play out, but it sure is what's happening. Ooh. Yeah, I like that well enough. So send it. Well, him. My opponent has a Force of Will. This is probably a good target. Leyline Binding, Xander's Lounge. I will Reanimate Troll. Yeah, this is a very large amount of power. I think my opponent is going to need Terminus or Supreme Verdict to get themselves out of this. That can set up a Terminus. Second Brainstorm Terminus could ruin me. A Leyline Binding can take out my Troll. They're still under a lot of pressure. And I didn't quite wiggle into a spot where the Stalkers got hit with removal instead of my Troll. So that was a great turn for my opponent. Both of those cards cantripped, so they still have 3 cards left over. I think they swung that game in a meaningful way there. I am now definitely afraid. I think I'm going to hold this last land in hand for the purposes of Exsanguinator Cavalry looting. And we'll just kind of see how my opponent's cards line up from here. Oh, that's great. Send it. We are getting a response. My creatures are hard to block, so this is probably a removal spell. Menace and Shadow. I'm not sure why we're playing this right now. Like we got a little whoopsie. I am very much leaning into a Terminus or Supreme Verdict, absolutely wrecking me. But I think I am very, very clearly in the beatdown role here and need to remain in that position. I think I can't give my opponent time for their Leyline Bindings, Solitudes to just take over the game. Yeah, no, you can draw your card. Yeah, they drew a Swords. I still get that damage off, which means that Douthie Voidwalker is lethal. We have gotten the GG from our opponent. Fantastic. Deck is feeling really smooth. All right, my opening hand is pretty great. I have a strong 1-2-3 curve of Thoughtseize into Voidwalker into Cavalry. Well, we know what we're playing against. I am just going to take the Doomsday. The Doomsday is not currently castable by my opponent, but I don't think I get to let that card slip through. I'm not playing Opposition Agent, so I think I am just going to keep this one, and I'm probably just resolving a turn 4 Exsanguinator Cavalry around Daze, which is not the most exciting thing in the world. We can surveil to try to find something to do with my own turn. A reanimate would be perfectly fine. Fatal Push is a dead card. We don't want that. Don't really want extra lands here. I'm going to pass the turn so that I can play this around days. I don't want my opponent to just hardcast their days and counter my thing. If they have a surveil land of their own, which I expect they do. They got rid of Personal Tutor. That might be because I am currently representing Opposition Agent. I guess I will just Fatal Push this in response to the trigger. You look at the top X, where X is your devotion to blue, and that actually matters here as my opponent was trying to use that for selection. I am just going to go ahead and fetch and do the super marginal deck thinning. Let's play the expensive card around days. Bowmasters has more potential value, but they might also just have a Doomsday already, in which case I would like the Bowmasters to be a surprise. Opponent has Edge of Autumn, they can immediately cycle. Alright, do we die now? Does not seem like we die now. So let's start here. Deal 2. I think I am going to blood token away this land. I don't have Shouldered in game 1. Thoughtseize is wonderful, although now I'm in this awkward, like, what do I do regarding these? I think I am going to Thoughtseize and see if I take something critical from the hand. That's another Oracle. Well, I'm going to take that. Bowmaster always eats days and does not resolve currently, so I'm going to go ahead and just play Stalker. And then this ensures that I have lethal next turn. This is 5 onboard damage plus a Bowmaster ping. My opponent set this up in a way that they have a reanimate kill. Good for them. That is another Thassa's Oracle. Rough. So with this pile, if I don't Thoughtseize, I maybe just win by playing Bowmasters. Opponent's at 6 though. So they only drew 4 cards. No, that does not actually kill them. Rough. Alright, what do we have here? Him is good. Surgical can shuffle Doomsday piles and maybe rip Doomsdays or Oracles out of the deck. Shouldered is pretty good against cantrips. Dauthi Voidwalker is an aggressive creature that I could board in. I think I have about 5 removal spells that are just gonna go. So this is about my starting point, and now I start thinking if Dauthi Voidwalker is better than some other things. Sinkholes are still probably good enough. They don't necessarily stop the Dark Ritual acceleration, but, you know, sometimes you have to get black, black, black off of lands. I think Sinkhole plus Wasteland is a reasonable way to do that. And I am thinking about whether or not I want to do something like Trim Exsanguinator Cavalry for Dauthi Voidwalker. Dauthi Voidwalker comes out of the gates faster, but gets in the way of the surgical extractions that I am boarding in. So there's a little tension there. I think I'm always trimming one of these. I think I am going to live with the tension between those cards. So I have a land destruction hand. My grief is very awkward with this hand. I think I'm just going to mulligan this. If my opponent leads on a basic or just like fetches and passes, I don't really have a great turn 2. I think I just have more aggressive hands. Oh no! We're so close to greatness. But it's Wasteland. Alright. Okay, how many is this? I get 5 of these. Swamp, Dark Ritual, Stalker, Thoughtseize as just a turn 1. I'm good with that, and then we just hope to draw a fetch land or anything else that puts something into my graveyard. So much for that Thoughtseize. I mean, that's okay. I am not descending. I can't target my opponent. That's just my turn. Will these 3 cards beat my opponent? And the Wasteland would have been good, but we can't necessarily bank on that. I'll just send in for 2. See if my opponent has a Ritual for Doomsday. Well, they don't have an untapped land for it. They don't want more land. 16? Yeah, Wasteland this into Sinkhole this would have been very good against this hand, but you can't know that. Although note that I would not have any pressure with that hand, right? I would have done 0 points to my opponent at this stage. So they would have time to draw out of it. They would still have 2 lands and be 1 mana source away from Doomsday, because they would have just kept this land on top after I destroyed one. That would be prolonging the game. Whether or not I'm winning the game is a different story. All right, they're at 8. I need another land. The Descend is a permanent card. So I attack for 2. My opponent's at 6. I ping my opponent to 5. If they brainstorm, like let's say they draw all 4, they're still not dead. Is it better for me to wasteland my opponent than Bowmaster accordingly? It might be. Bowmaster also just does nothing if they have days. I think I am going to hope that this slows them down a turn. Send in with both of these, scale up both of these creatures, and hope that attacking them one more time prices them out of enough life. So there's Brainstorm. They fetch. I would have 4 Bowmaster pings, which would not be enough to kill them here. We ended up just on the wrong side of that one. All right, my opening hand is great, and it's just a question what am I getting rid of with Grief? I kind of need to immediately commit. Might be Bowmasters. Like turn 1, Grief Reanimate, turn 2, Thoughtseize Surveil, turn 3, Sinkhole Land. That seems like a pretty good generic way to sequence this. That is highly disruptive. Well, I think I know how I'm going to play this one. I think we are going to go ahead and reanimate that Grief, and we're going to play this in the way that really takes advantage of the early game. I am just going to try to keep my opponent from ever casting a single spell by sinkholing their land. Fuck. That's so unfortunate. All right, life got a lot harder. So now we are playing Real Magic, which I did not want to do. Double Fatal Push off the top, not great. I'll take one of these up the beanstalks. Unfortunately, the other gets into play. The whole plan was take their land, take their looks at more lands, blow up island, potentially that same turn, and never have to deal with the 2 copies of Up the Beanstalk. But that's not the timeline that we are living in. I'm going to try to stay on a similar timeline, though, and try to keep my opponent off of blue mana for cantrips. That's not happening. Life is terrible. Well, in good news, my opponent does not have more land. In bad news, I have no threats, and my opponent is sitting there with an extra removal spell just chilling. Ugh. Yeah? So I think at this point I have lost this game, and it is just a matter of time. But I expect around turn 7 or 8, I will probably just be conceding. All right. So much for my instant speed fatal push. We can now F6 my opponent's turns. Cavalry's not, in theory a bad card, but like Teferi and Leyline Binding and stuff just kind of make this irrelevant, unfortunately. Like Exsanguinator Cavalry looting away my excess lands is certainly a big deal, but it's just not going to get to do its thing. And now my opponent gets up to their next land, which gives them Uro mana. Reanimate. Not the worst. Let's start here, see how my opponent answers this, and then go in for the Troll. I am going to keep this extra land in hand. I would, in theory, like to loot it away. All right, I've got dudes in play. There goes a dude. Goodbye, Troll. So now, the Uro is a problem. Oh, I might have messed up, actually. I might have needed to play Swamp to keep fetch land in hand so I can Fatal Push Uro. Ooh, yeah. I think I'm losing the game regardless. I think that speeds up my loss. Didn't have it. Let's try Fatal Push. Okay. So now what? Am I attacking the Teferi, or am I looting the swamp and trying to get deeper into my deck? I think I'm trying to get deeper into my deck. I don't know. I think I just need more raw cards. F. It's starting to get to the point where I am just considering conceding because I think I am so unlikely to win. Like, that Uro is going to keep coming back. There's the Teferi value. There's the up the beanstalk value. My opponent is also at 26. It's hard to aggro them out. I don't have the shoulders and stuff that can swing this matchup super, super hard. I think after drawing another land, I'm okay to just call it there and value my time. So I always want these 4. I think I ended up boarding in this before. And some of this stuff falls into the tier 2 of things that I can think about. I think I gutted a good amount of my removal before. I think I got rid of Thoughtseizes or highly trimmed them to become more threat dense. I'm unsure, without playing this matchup a bunch of times, whether or not Thoughtseize coming in before Up the Beanstalk is just so important that I always have to do that. I think something approximating this is fine. This is turn 2 Dark Ritual instead of turn 1 Dark Ritual? Or maybe even later. The hand's a keep. I could also just Dark Ritual Stalker Bowmaster immediately. Just turn 2 Sinkhole. That's fine. One of them gets countered. I can bring them back with Reanimate. Just another note on sideboarding here. If I was not boarding in a bunch of 4-drops, I think you could conceptually get rid of Dark Ritual in this matchup, expecting it to go slower. But I think, given that I am boarding in 4-drops in my 19-land deck, I have to just keep the Dark Rituals. Now, I do need my opponent to have a sinkholeable land for my next turn cycle to go well. So if they don't fetch, if they don't... Never mind. Get in there, boys. Yes. So now I can hymn them, attack the hand. Got double cantrip, which is maybe not what I want to get when I have the active Orcish Bowmasters. Yeah, you've got your fancy pants lounge, all your colors. I can knock my opponent off of many colors at the same time with Sinkhole. That's kind of the good news here. I imagine I lose Bowmasters first. That just opens up another cantrip for the remainder of this turn cycle. And now the question becomes, which land do I Sinkhole? The land that lets them cantrip, or the land that lets them play the white removal spells? There is also a world where I just play Douthie Voidwalker. I think I am interested in making removal spells harder to cast. We're not doing the best job of descending here. Bah. I mean, that's fine. I will just keep sending in for as long as I can. Well, that's 7. I have 6 power on board, assuming this resolves. It's not necessarily a safe assumption, but it did. Okay. It is Surveil time. Ooh, opponent got rid of Lorien Revealed, so this can represent a draw 3. I don't think that's what I'm doing with it. I think just physically attacking with it matters the most. All right. No creatures in graveyard. Opponent's at 3. I am a little scared, though. I am not going to lie. I'm going to do this now so that I descend. I'm going to say no. I want more threats, because the way that my opponent wins is removing this and then having another removal spell or an Uro or something to take this out. Beyond that, I am okay versus a flash blocker or equivalent. Yeah, extra removal is great. Send in. Surgical Extraction on Wasteland is acceptable. I assume that is just my opponent looking at my deck list before conceding. Fantastic. So another way that I could see approaching this is just removing Reanimate. The exile-based removal means that Reanimate is not particularly strong, but if I remove Reanimate, my griefs become considerably worse. And if I was removing Reanimate, I would be bringing in Thoughtseize. I think I'm going to keep the upside of Grief Reanimate, just being able to obliterate an opposing start. Absolutely not. This one's fine. I think the Grief is the worst card here. I would very much prefer this to be Thoughtseize with this specific hand. I think there's a good chance that I lose to Up the Beanstalk here. Alright, nice wastelandable land. Aha. We're going to go regular Swamp Pass with the intention of Troll cycling. Oh, fantastic, no beans. So we'll grab Swamp. I am probably just going to attempt to Sinkhole my opponent over anything else here. Probably targeting the most colors at once. It just resolved. That's great for me. That's a major setback to my opponent. Now, they could just have a handful of lands, and that does not particularly matter to them. I believe for the sake of mana efficiency, I'm going to go ahead and play Cavalry here, so that I can play Douthie Voidwalker and Bowmaster in the next turn cycle. And if my opponent has swords, this eats that instead of Bowmasters. Yeah, absolutely no white mana showing yet. Opponent did have a fair number of lands from the look of things. And there is the swords that I talked about. Ooh, love that. So we're going to Wasteland the blue source, see if we get a Brainstorm in response. If we do, I Bowmasters. We don't. Since we don't, I think I am just going to play out the Voidwalker immediately, try to keep the 5th card out of the graveyard for Uro purposes, or try to keep an Uro out of the graveyard as well. Oh, any basics? Yeah, sure. Shouldered off the top would be cool. Just saying. Okay. Let's surveil. No. I think I'm doing this and just doing the sorcery speed Bowmasters here before my opponent has extra draws at Force of Will or whatever. And this means that I don't kind of awkwardly hold up my mana in a stare-off versus something like a Brainstorm. This makes me much worse against something like Supreme Verdict, but that Supreme Verdict would still be great another turn down the road. So, you know. Swords on Stalker. I think I am doing this him pre-combat based on vibes. So now I can't target this. I will target my Orc army, which will grow and not actually die. And I do get an extra point of combat damage here since I cast the him pre-combat. Send it. 15. All right, opponent's got a Ponder. We get to do some more pinging. What did Ponder do? Ponder did not shuffle. Reanimate on Troll is live. Reanimate on this Bowmasters if my opponent ambushes it is also live. Let's send in and see what happens. Opponent takes the damage. I think I'm going to continue to press my current advantage. Again, we are worse against the Supreme Verdict and Terminus type cards for me taking this line. Force pitching a Brainstorm. Fantastic. That's another land drop. That's probably not what my opponent is looking for here. Ooh, fantastic. I'll go ahead and send in immediately. Ooh, now we're getting something. Double fetch. Solitude? Solitude's pretty rough here. Yes. My opponent can Solitude this, block this. I don't actually have all that much removal in my deck. You don't have any removal modes on you. I guess I'm going to play this. So I think I am doing this minusing and hoping that my opponent does not remove this to immediately kill Sorin. I can Sorin plus, and then Sorin is always alive for one more turn. But if this works, I am quite stable. But opponent's got a lot of removal in their deck, so, you know. All right, I 100% will block. You can have that extra life. I want to try to keep this Planeswalker in play. That is an Uro. That is a problem. All right, Sorin. I have looked at the card. Yes, I will use that ability. I'm going to grief my opponent. Don't expect that the grief is the most relevant thing in the world. I'm wrong. I get to take a draw 3. I'm on no fatal pushes. I'm on no fatal pushes. I'm going to go ahead and make the land drop. I would love to draw like a sudden edict here, I would love to draw a Reanimate. Reanimate on my opponent's Solitude to permanently exile their Uro is kind of a big deal. All right, no land drop off that trigger. We'll do the super marginal fetch to thin thing. 2 swamps left in deck for future reference. Come on, Soren. Yes. Yes. Where's Sol? No. No. They junked the Solitude with Uro. No. Oh, that's so sad. If my opponent has a removal spell for Troll, would I chump block with Grief to keep Soren alive? Yes, I don't think I'm winning this game without Soren. Damn it. Why is my opponent good at Magic? Seriously though, heads up play. That was a shuffle. Okay. Happy to see that not being a draw 3. But this is serving the purpose of shuffling for the brainstorm, which is why my opponent is not waiting. Yeah. Am I losing Soren immediately? I am. So now that this is not protecting, I might... Oh, God. I might be trying to shift back to the beatdown roll while an Uro is in play. This is a disaster. I don't think I'm winning this one anymore. I think I'm going to take this damage and try to shift into the aggro roll. That's so hard against Lorien Revealed. I get to send in for 9. I can chump block Uro and just try to remain the aggressor. Again, though, that's incredibly unlikely. This is so much card advantage between the draw 3 and the Uro attack. Sure. Yeah. I guess this gives me 1 life either way, right? One life to reduce this. Yeah. So I am dead to an Uro attack next turn in theory. One has no lands, so they have 4 relevant spells. A Reanimate. I think pre-combat, I need to see if that resolves. Because if it doesn't, I need to leave back Grief as a chump blocker. All right, they are looking for an answer. Or alternatively, just trying to use the Brainstorm prior to Bowmaster coming into play. All right, Bowmaster pings. This leaves 2 chump blockers. I will attack for 9. My opponent is at 6. If they attack, they are at 9. This is still 9 damage. I cannot get excited here. My opponent has 5 cards in hand and basically infinite mana. I need to chump block with my Orc here so that I don't take damage. That goes to the face. Get down, Mr. President. And then how bad is the rest of this turn? Is it Terminus bad? It is Terminus bad. So my opponent has 5 cards in hand and now has time to deploy beans on an empty board. I guess like a Shouldered would be cool. Yeah, I guess that's fine. Now we just gotta get lucky. I don't think there's anything else to it. But all it takes is like 1 copy of 4th Airlingas or 1 Solitude or something like that to kill me. I am at 3 life. I'm not hopeful here. Sure. Opponent junks. Yeah, no, that's fine. Fine. It's fine. Narrator's voice. It was not fine. And a swords to clear the board. Okay. I will keep struggling in vain. And if my opponent misses for a turn, it's also just not the end of the world, right? Oh, wait. Oh, no, it was last game that there was stuff with void counters in exile. Shit. I was about to think, like, hey, can I just get a Lorien revealed? All right, I get in for some amount of damage. I guess I can wasteland my opponent off of red mana. Oh, am I just dead now? Solitude me? Endurance me. That doesn't technically kill me, but it's not the best. They're just going to go ahead and send their deck back into their deck. I guess I will wasteland them off of red. It doesn't really do anything because Xander's Lounge is now back in the deck. Second Endurance kills me. That was a fantastic game. We ended up just a little bit short. All right, I am definitely keeping my opening hand. There's going to be some question about how to play it. I think I just need to start scaling up the creature from turn 1. And then I Sinkhole next turn into Sinkhole Thoughtseize or something like that. Like, if I don't play my creature on turn 1, I'm probably playing it on turn 3. Which is not the best when we are trying to play a tempo hand. I wonder if my density of fetch lands should be even higher than it is right now in this deck. I think I settled on 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. No, I settled on 7 and was thinking about the 8th. I think with Stalker, I potentially want one more. The fetch lands are just really good because they are also representing the Undercity sewers. Yeah, big little buddy. Is that okay? Yeah. All right. So we're playing against combo, and I am on the land destruction deck. Thoughtseize into Reanimate is very funny, but it's just very hard to lose if I do this. You know? So I think game 1 is basically a bye, and I hope to win one of games 2 and 3. My opponent is playing the Demonstrate Cascade deck list, sometimes referred to as Creative Technique or Mississippi River. Ah! Oh, okay. Oh shit, they have Tybalt's Trickery in the deck in game 1. That just doesn't matter, though. Does haste? Yeah, I want to take that. Sinkhole you. Attack. I will blow up your next land as well as do hasty boarding party into some other shit. A nice sandstone needle you have there. It's a shame you built that nice rock formation in a sinkhole. Yeah! Alright, opponent had to step away for just a second. They are back now. So I can even surveil to do something cute here, right? And try to set it up. It's less, right? Yeah, it's because it's Cascade. We'll just put that into my graveyard. So I'm going to reanimate boarding party. I'm going to see if I hit the last... Oh, no, I'm not cascading, right. I'm not casting. I was thinking of Trumpeting Carnosaur. 3 sinkholes. This is what the people came here for. All right, and we take game 1. I think game 2 is tough. I think game 3 is easy. So I'm not going to get much better at disrupting my opponent. I can play surgicals. Surgicaling a creative technique is pretty good. I can consider playing him, which is not the best, and I can consider just playing more aggressive creatures. I can also consider doing a swap for Sudden Edict over some other removal. I never want to be playing Fatal Push. Do I want any removal? I don't think so. And then, how do we feel about like Voidwalker versus Cavalry? Voidwalker's probably an upgrade. Yes, we'll keep this. Artifact mana doesn't do anything. Sorin's not great. Children is medium. Let's run this. This is a highly disruptive hand that needs to luck into some more mana off the top. I think since lands are very good, including Wasteland, and Reanimate is very good, and Thoughtseize is very good, and Surgical is very good, that this hand is good enough to keep. Alright, so we have an ETB tapped red land. That's a troll. That's fantastic. That means I have mana for turn 2. We're going to see how many cards I need to strip from my opponent's hand here by starting with a Thoughtseize. I will take a Tybalt's Trickery. So this leaves my opponent with an 8 mana uncastable spell. So I don't need to immediately go and take that. I would love to naturally draw the land to sinkhole some of these. I did not. So I'm in a Swamp Cycle. The Mana Denial plan might not exactly be on the table here anymore. I will Thoughtseize my opponent. Sometimes they have drawn a card that I need to take. Not this time. They've got 4 lands. The Sinkhole plan is no longer great. I want to just get a creature in play. I don't like how this game is lining up. We are tempo, and we're not doing the attacking portion of the deck as of right now. Reanimate on Troll is fantastic. I'm going to spend the 2 life to do this. Despite the fact that a ton of time my opponent just reveals a bunch of lands. Yep. I accept. I think it's either that or you just like pitch a card to Grief. I think I'm going to value the 2 cards in hand over Grief. Sorry, I think I... Oh, I said that right. I think it's better to have 2 cards in hand than 2 more life. I think I am going to go from full to dead if my opponent starts doing anything meaningful. All right, new land drop from my opponent. We have dodged a relevant spell, which is great. However, I don't have a great spell myself here to do. Opponent's at 14. I'm going to Sinkhole this one. I think I'm going to Grief pitching a Grief again. Just kind of knowing that it's not a particularly good play. No, that doesn't make sense this time, right? Because red is not bottlenecked now. 1, 2, 3, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, maybe it doesn't make sense. They already have enough red for a call forth. Like, they could have cast the 8 mana Call Forth the Tempest last turn already. Surgical Extraction. That's not bad. What's at 8? In response to the 4 mana Cascade spell, I could surgically extract Tybalt's Trickery. I think I'm just passing the turn. Sure. And we're chilling. All right. This puts my opponent to 2. I will Grief, pitching a Grief. Just kind of check and see what's going on over there. Do I want to surgically extract Tybalt's Trickery right now with this Emrakul trigger on the stack so that a top deck 4 mana Cascade spell is not live? Or do I want to hold surgical for potentially stopping a Creative Technique chain? The thing about the Creative Technique chain is that the original Creative Technique goes on the stack, and then the Demonstrate copies go above it, so it's not going to resolve for a while. I think given where I am at and the fact that I have to weather exactly 1 turn, I'm just going to surgically extract Tybalt's Trickery. Let's get those out of here. Oh, is my opponent not... Oh, they're doing Violent Outburst instead of the 4 mana one. Sure. Got it. Okay. I'll play this out. And do we dodge? We do dodge. I feel like we got a little lucky there. We end up with a 3-2 finish. All right, so we're at the end of the league here. I feel pretty good about this deck list. Let's kind of get this back into a more traditional order here, though, while we talk about this. So I like what I did to the deck. I like treating Sinkhole as a tempo spell that is backing up aggressive creatures rather than treating it as something that is helping you buy time to get to these larger threats. I think if I were going to fire off another league immediately, I would cut 1 swamp for 1 more fetch land. I think I just need a couple more fetch lands in the deck. Undercity Sewers was very, very good. I could see wanting to squeeze in a second one. At the point where you have the second one, sometimes you're not casting your 2-drop on curve. Maybe that's okay. You could run some numbers to kind of see how that feels. But generally speaking, this felt pretty smooth. Is running Sinkhole better than running, just 4 more aggressive cards of some kind or a couple more removal spells or something? Probably not. But is it more fun? Absolutely. Does it create some absolutely hilarious board states? Absolutely. I still really wanted to have access to these cards in the 75. I'm very glad that I moved those to the sideboard rather than cutting them. I think they were very important for some of those control matchups. It's not like Sorin the Mirthless is the most exciting card in the world, but just having some big 4 mana haymakers that can swing life totals quickly or otherwise generate some value feels good. If you don't want to play some of these, maybe you could think about Gix as well. Gix is another thing that can kind of give you that card advantage, help you stay aggressive. I think this one is perfectly fine. It's pretty cute with Bowmasters in particular. Although I guess, on the other hand, is also kind of bad against Bowmasters in that regard. But yeah, I think generally speaking, I'm going to give this one a thumbs up. I think I'm happy that we didn't mess around with some of the slower stuff like Fulminator Mage. Fulminator Mage Reanimate to like do it again is super cool, but it felt like the 8 land destruction effects that I had in the deck were about the appropriate amount. Was happy with the Hymn to Turok in the sideboard. I didn't talk about this in the deck tech, I don't think. One of the reasons that I wanted another card like this in the sideboard is that in the main deck I have 5 removal spells. And so I wanted to make sure that generally speaking, against various sorts of decks, I had 5 cards to bring in. So for example, I have 5 cards to bring in versus graveyard-oriented combo. If I have an artifact-oriented combo deck list, I have these 4, and then I maybe don't have another one. So the idea was that Hymn to Turok served as my 5th generic card that I could board in when my removal spells weren't good, and maybe something like Shouldered was too slow. Yeah, folks, I hope you enjoyed. Should you need any cards for this deck, toamagic.com, promo code ThrabenU to save you a little bit on your order, and I hope you all have a wonderful rest of the day. See ya!